I'm Tarot Oracle, and today we're continuing the Wands with the Tarot Symbolism. So we're off to the Six of Wands. By the way, Universal Rider Waite, the Hansen Roberts, and the Crystal Visions Tarot. Crystal Visions Tarot. And where's my Hansen Roberts box? Right here. Hansen Roberts and Universal Rider Waite. So the interesting part about this card is just how much recognition he's actually receiving. So he's on the horse with a lot of green, sort of pointing us to life and accomplishments, with the wreath, life and accomplishments, just accomplishment after accomplishment, and even has one on his head. But the remarkable thing is the horse is actually giving him attention too. So not only does he have this parade, and he has all of these people sort of celebrating everything and giving him all sorts of feedback on how great he is, but he has the horse also looking back in respect, I assume, at the person who is accomplishing everything. So obviously this means accomplishment, but it's sort of overdoing it, right? The overabundance of recognition. That's one of the things that I go to sometimes with this particular card. Is a lot of times we just have too much recognition or too much focus on one particular person. And you'll see that like maybe at work, right? You have the same person, he's sort of known for, he or she is sort of known for their accomplishments and getting this done and that done. And they always seem to be getting yet more recommendations, more accomplishments, more of everything. So even when they're doing something maybe minor and other people deserve that recognition, they're not getting it because this one particular person has it. So that sometimes points to that situation, albeit rarely. However, it's just this overabundance of recognition that you have, not only here, right, but sort of that surrounding aura that just comes with the card. And you have the same thing maybe here with the Crystal Visions, where we have again a little bit overabundant. So it's kind of over the top. And again, you'll see that in different life situations and whatnot, but it pretty much means the same as always. The green sort of points us to the life, or the life being the life sprouting energy that we have with this particular card. So, and then the wands, the people, the procession, and everyone is sort of carrying it around. In support is another way that I look at this as well. So again, recognition, accomplishment, victory, as per Thoth, but support as well. So not only do you have the recognition, but you have the support. So if this particular person needed support on his next venture, something like that, people are more willing to support success rather than failure, right? So let's say someone failed at something just over and over, or someone is just seen as a failure in certain things, they're not going to get a lot of support. But this person will, because of the success metric that he has sort of set forth. And that is the Six of Wands. And the next card on the list is the Seven of Wands, or Seven of Rods, is in the Hansen Roberts. So here we have someone obviously defending himself, right? So a lot of different things to note within this particular card. The first one is just how uneven his footing is. So you'll see here we have sort of a different shoe, or the shoe is worn down, or the shoe has taken some damage versus the other shoe slash boot. And we have a similar situation here to where he has sort of the higher ground, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But we have this uneven footing within the Rider Waite. It doesn't really represent anywhere else, but an uneven footing. In other words, this has been going on a while, right? You don't wear down your shoe defending yourself if you're just starting to defend yourself. So it seems like, again, this has been going on a while. It's the first thing I want you to notice about this particular card. Again, the shoes and the uneven footing. And the second thing is the uneven footing points to possibly, being in uneven ground or not having as much of an advantage as you think you do. because obviously he's on higher ground. We have the higher ground theme here, here, and here. So this person is on higher ground defending themselves. And it is also a younger person, sort of pointing to he is capable of defending himself. So he's not like an older person like on the Hermit card or anything like that. He's a younger person capable of defending himself, but he has uneven footing and he's not doing as well as he thought he might. So the second thing, or the third thing, is the higher ground. He does have the higher ground. So although he's not prepared, or hasn't fully realized, he's not prepared, he hasn't fully realized the conflict, he hasn't fully realized all of the potential that he has here, but he does here. So you have that nice mix, sort of that yin-yang, right? That nice mix of he has the higher ground, but he doesn't look prepared. And he has uneven footing, so he may be at a little advantage, but he also is young. He's more capable of defending himself as opposed to an older person. That mix between good and bad, and I think a lot of times when we approach this card, we all think of it as bad, right? You're being attacked. Oh my God, we're being attacked. You're defending himself. It's not all bad. We have advantages and we have disadvantages all wrapped up within the symbolism for this card. Which way you would rather lean obviously depends on the cards around it and how you lean in your interpretation. But just remember, it's not, oh my God, you're being attacked, you have to defend yourself. It's more of a fine balance between you have certain advantages and you have certain disadvantages. So it's a mixture, and that happens a lot of times when we are defending himself. Let's say somebody at work doesn't like us and files a complaint or whatever, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to be advantageous to us. Maybe we have a good work history. Maybe we know our boss well. A lot of things could be disadvantageous to us. Maybe the person reporting us is important. I mean, again, it's a mixture between good and bad and advantages and disadvantages, and this is a fine balance between all of those. So it's important just to note that once you pick this up and not just go straight to, oh my God, we're defending himself. So as far as symbology, again, we have the higher ground. We have lots of life. We have the life of the youth, and we have lots of greenery as well, pointing us to the life-giving just nature of this card. So that is the 7 of Wands. And the next is the 8, maybe the most confusing card in the deck, right? So we have the greenery, we have the distant hills, maybe sort of a moderate challenge. We don't have any big mountains back there. We have a home, sort of a homestead back there. Again, farther away, but we just have these flying rods. It really doesn't mean much. The only really symbolism that you can come out with this would be that one is not equal to the others. That's just about the only thing that I can sort of spot within this card. An interesting card, obviously means movement and whatnot, and the reimagining of the Crystal Visions Tarot I think is very cool. It's the same sort of movement, but you have the unicorns. So again, an interesting card. Not a lot of symbolism to sort of pull out from here. A bunch of interesting things within there about how they're sort of uneven and one is shorter than the other. But overall, I mean, we're bound to just the basic gist of the card, which is movement. The only thing that you can sort of link out is it's going this direction. So it's moving this direction, we think, right? Because it's coming from above. So we have something from a higher plane coming into a lower plane, but moving in this direction. And that's going to be important for card interactions, which is my system. So we have movement towards the person defending himself, for example. So that is the 8 of Wands. And now we come to the 9, and someone that sort of put a wall around themselves, but left themselves a little room, but put a wall around there. So we're back to sort of the 7, right? Where we're defending ourselves, but we've lost some advantages and gained some advantages. One of the advantages that we lost in the defending ourselves is obviously the height and the mountain and all of that stuff. His shoes are now normal, so it's obviously a different person than this right here, and a different person than this as well. But his shoes are sort of normal compared to the 7 when he's defending himself. But the 9 is sort of looks like he's been defending himself. So he has that history of defending himself. And obviously he is injured, not a major injury. You know, he's not missing a limb or anything, but it's not a major injury, but he does have that injury sort of pointed to within this card. So he's not, you'll notice all of these people that are defending themselves, that are running a parade, all of these different people look like they've been in battle, and yet they're not wearing armor. So you'll have many people within the deck obviously wearing armor. For example, the knight. So obviously the knight is going to battle. He's a bit better prepared than possibly the person within the 9 card. But the 9 card has sort of gotten a hit or sort of gotten an injury from doing battle. Maybe he should have borrowed or gotten some armor to defend himself. But he is injured and he is sort of looking out. So it's obviously not a positive, happy card. You are injured, you are sort of recovering from that. And he also is sort of has that closed body language to where he's holding the rod or the wand in front of him in sort of a defensive manner, right? As well as he's sort of holding himself up. Could be using that as a cane. Maybe he's more injured than we think, or maybe he's more injured than we see, and he needs that to sort of hold himself up. So that works not only to hold him up, but it works as a defensive measure as well. The other defensive measure, obviously, we have is sort of this gate behind him that's formulated with the wands. And again, the wands are uneven. It's not an even type of gate, and we have a gap right behind, directly behind him where he could escape. So he has an escape route through that barrier that is right beside him. So that we have multiple sort of indications that he's defending himself. The first one is the stance. Second one is the look. He's obviously looking out, right? Doesn't have his eyes closed. He's not looking forward. He's not relaxing. He's not sitting down. He's standing up. He's ready to do battle, and he's sort of looking out in a defensive manner. So we're back to the 7 with this heavy defense card, but he has a lot more advantages. The other advantage he has, obviously, is the escape route through the gap in the wands, which looks like it would fit him, and he can jump through and run into the greenery as well. So we have a lot of different things here. Not only is he defending himself, but he's better prepared to defend himself maybe now than before. And that brings us to the question, is this a situation to where he was not prepared to defend himself in the first place? Somebody just attacked him out of the blue, you never know, and he wasn't prepared, and now he is much more paranoid, much more prepared than he was before. Maybe he built the wall behind him, etc. But we do have a situation where he's much more prepared than possibly was in the past. And so when you're reading with this, it's important to sort of use that feel in your reading, right? When you were attacked or when you first defended yourself, were you prepared? And it could be, again, a situation, maybe somebody complains about you, maybe somebody is, trying to attack you literally or something like that. You come to the situation to where you have to ask, were you prepared in the first place? Because he may not have been prepared. Now he's over-prepared. And a lot of times we do that in life, right? We're attacked, we have a situation come up, and we didn't expect. And so what we do is now we're paranoid, right? We're paranoid and we're a bit over-prepared now that we've sort of been hit with whatever it was we got hit with. So definitely something to ask when you use this in a reading. Were you prepared initially? Now that you're defending yourself, are you more prepared? And what type of injury did you happen upon? So that is the 9 of Wands. And the last card we have is the 10 of Wands or the 10 of Rods. Now, a bunch of interesting things to note about this particular card. The first one is is he's sort of holding these at the most horrible angle ever. And I say that because obviously this is the obvious translation of this card is he's overburdened, right? He has too much. He's overburdened and he's trying to hang on. And yet, he's bent over like that. I mean, you're going to snap your back in half if you do that for more than 10 seconds, right? You can't be bent over like that. If you were carrying that many rods, you would be standing straight up and you'd have the rods sort of, adjusted on your shoulders and et cetera, et cetera. You wouldn't be in that stance. So that leads us to the question of, is this sitting on the ground? But it doesn't look like it's sitting on the ground. We don't have any shadows to indicate it may or may not be. But if it is sitting on the ground, he could be using it for stability. In other words, he could have set it on the ground and now he's leaning forward and he's resting. So maybe he was carrying these on his shoulders and now he leaned forward and he's putting them in the process of putting them on the ground. So, and he's leaning forward because he's unloading. So that brings an extra meaning to this, right? Now, obviously, we have the symbolism of the greenery and the life-giving and the road, which looks long, because in the distance we have a home, right? So he could be heading home with the burden. So that's another interesting thing to do if you get this card, is ask, are you heading home or are you heading somewhere familiar and carrying a lot of burden with you? Because that's a good question. The second question is going to be, are you unloading this burden or are you in the process of unloading this burden? Because I believe that he's unloading it from his shoulders onto the ground. So he could be unloading a burden. And a lot of times we'll have that in life to where we've been carrying this burden. We've been worried about something. I had a medical bill, for example, I was worried about. And I was sort of just carrying this burden around, right? I was constantly worried. And then the insurance covered a lot of it. And it really sort of let me unload that burden. So again, he could be in the process of unloading because he's obviously not carrying it. Nobody can carry something in that style. Even if he's sort of lurching forward for a moment, he's still probably unloading it and trying to get rid of it. So he's in the process of doing that. So you have the same sort of feel with the Ten of Rods, the Ten of Wands with the Crystal Visions Tarot. It looks like he has it. See, he has them loaded up and he's more prepared to carry that burden because it's loaded up and he has a horse helping him, etc. So that's one of the questions you ask here. Are you in the process of unloading that? And where are you headed, right? Are you headed home? Are you headed to someplace familiar? Are you carrying a lot of burden with you? Do you feel like you can unload that burden before you get home? So a lot of interesting questions with this particular card and an excellent symbology. So one of those things to where you can't just put down the card and go, oh, you're overburdened. You have to start asking the questions, right? So very cool card and very deep in symbology and very deep in meaning as well, because obviously it's just so much meaning in all of these cards, in my opinion. And that is the Ten of Wands. And speaking of wonderfulness, I have all these awesome Patreon supporters. What is Patreon, you ask? That's where you can go support me by giving me a couple of bucks to support the software that I use and all of the different stuff that I do on the channel. If you like the content, feel free to throw a couple of bucks my way. So the link in the description if you'd like to do that. And current Patreon supporters are Adam G, Alley Cat, Annie Lemaster, Brianna Santiago, Carmen Gabriano, Carolyn Bouchard, Astro Corey, Crystal McGinn, Daily Empress, Fatima, Galatia 9, Gary Fink, Hot Chocolate, Jessica Mante, John Foote, Kim Wilson, KSW, La Ami, Richard Zeh, Shintaro Kuga, Sinai Zamora, and Trino Idaverio. Thank you so much for being Patreon supporters. I appreciate your support so much. And as always, please hit like and subscribe. Brings more people to the channel. We can all hang out and have fun together. Thank you so much for watching.